Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hey everyone, Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's really wonderful to have your company for another episode of the show. Recently, I've been reading a great book by Oprah Winfrey, and it's called What I Know For Sure. And in this book, which is a book of short stories, or short passages, I should say, Oprah talks about the things that she's learned throughout her life and the lessons that she now holds dear and what she calls things she knows for sure. And as I was reading the book, it got me thinking, well, what are the things that I know for sure? That thought set off a chain of thoughts. And one of the realizations I had is that as I've gotten older, in some ways, I feel like there's less that I know for sure rather than more. And just to be clear, I don't mean that I'm less confident as I'm older than when I was younger, because actually quite the opposite is true. When you get a bit more grey hair and you get a little bit older, I actually feel like you get more comfortable in your own skin and you know yourself and you know what you like and what you don't like a bit more. But what I'm really referring to here is that when I was younger, my thinking was much more binary. I was much more set in my views. I was much more, of the view that things were good or bad, right or wrong, black or white. And now I'm a lot more nuanced in my thinking, and I see shades of grey. I see maybes and what ifs and possibilities rather than definite binary kind of yes, no answers. And so I've come to believe that as you get a little bit older, you start to become a little less judgmental. Well, at least I've found that, and maybe you will too. But what I have come to realize is that there's 100 ways to do things, and there's no one right way. There's just the right way for you. In this podcast, I'm going to share some of the things that I know for sure, some of the things I've learned, and I believe they're pretty universal, but you'll have your own perspective on this, and that's totally okay too, okay? But these are the things that I've found to be true in my life, and that is what I really want to talk about today. Now, the first of these, I'm going to go through 5. The first one is that success takes time. Now, in today's world, everything's fast, right? Everything is faster, and we've got change at a pace that is just impossibly hard to keep up with. And so in a world that favors speed, there seems to be very little attention paid to actually achieving mastery of something, getting really good at your craft. Now, whether that's clinical dentistry, whether it's business or anything in between, getting good at something requires effort, right? And it requires consistent effort, consistent work, and a consistent application over an extended period of time. Now, equally, if you've read that book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, you've heard about the 10,000 hour rule, and I believe that there's some conjecture about whether it's 10,000 hours or not. The long and short of it is that mastery takes time. And there's that wonderful quote, I don't quite know who to attribute it to, and that is, repetition is the mother of skill. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. So whether it's business, whether you're running your practice, whether you're mastering a new clinical skill set, or as I said, anything else as well, it's important to understand that that's going to require some application and effort over a period of time. And what I've noticed, and certainly I'm noticing with my children as well, is that they want success without necessarily having to put in that effort. They're wanting that instantaneous success. They want the reward now without necessarily doing the work, or they want it to be easier than it is. And one of the quotes I had in my retention book was from John F. Kennedy, and it says, "Don't pray for easier times, pray to be stronger men," or words to that effect. And I really believe that there's some truth in that. So when it comes to getting good at something, firstly, please be patient with yourself. Please don't expect overnight results. Please don't expect to be a master at something, in a short space of time. You really got to lean into that. You got to do the work. Now, when it comes to business, which is the world that I live in, oftentimes I see people wanting to get rich quickly. And what we're talking about is, how do you build a sustainable business that is going to stand the test of time? And that's going to take application and effort over a period of time. Now, that's not a very popular concept in today's world, where everyone's looking for a hack for this or a life hack for that, or, all these sorts of shortcuts that everyone's looking for. But it is an inconvenient truth that success takes time. So that's my first thing that I know for sure. Now, the second thing that I know for sure is something around the topic of economic downturns. And what I know for sure is, I guess, encapsulated by a quote by Warren Buffett. And that is, when the tide goes out, you can see who's swimming naked. I really love this quote from Warren Buffett. I think it speaks very, very directly to business, and it speaks very directly to business management and people's competency in that space as well. So one of the things that we know is that when the times are good, you can get away with sloppy business practices, and the sheer volume of work allows you to wallpaper over any cracks in the foundations of your business. And it looks great, it looks amazing until the party stops, until the music stops, until the tide goes out. And as Warren Buffett says, then you can see who's swimming naked. You can see who hasn't been paying attention to business. Typically it's those people that focus only on top line revenue and not on bottom line cash flow that get caught out, or people that over leverage themselves, people who take on too much debt. And because debt is like a fire, it can warm you, which you can use debt very constructively to grow your business, but too much debt can also burn you. So when it comes to having good business practices from a financial point of view, there's really kind of 4 keystone financial systems that you want to have in your practice. The first one is a revenue generation system where you can reliably and repeatably generate revenue. The second one is around cash flow maximization. The third one is around money management. And the fourth one is around wealth creation, where you take some of your business profits and convert that into personal wealth. Now, on the topic of wealth, what I notice is a lot of people sacrifice their future wealth, their real wealth, their actual wealth, for the appearance of wealth today. By trying to appear wealthy today and to run with the fast crowd, to keep up with the Joneses, they're actually giving up their true wealth, their actual wealth, and the wealth that is going to give them freedom into the future by trying to look wealthy when they might not just have the means right now. So again, economic downturns will really show you who's swimming well and who's kind of floundering around, because as soon as that tide goes out, man, you're going to see everything, and some of that stuff you just don't want to see. I'm reminded of this when COVID occurred. There was a couple of practice owners I remember in the lead up to COVID who were very excited about their growth. They were on a journey to 8 figures, which is amazing, and that's awesome. And I salute them, high five them. That's terrific. The problem is that clearly they were focusing exclusively on top line and not on bottom line, because those same people, when COVID came around, were crying poor and fearing they'd go out of business, and were posting as much on social media. And while I've empathized and feel sorry for those people, because they're really nice people, they're good folk, it shows that they were not really applying great business practices. So anyway, that's number 2. Economic downturns reveal the truth. The third thing I want to share with you about things I know for sure is that the best customer is the one you've already got. I see this time and time and time again. I see so many practices focusing exclusively on new patient numbers. Now, let's be clear. New patient numbers are really important. That's an important metric, right? No one's denying the importance of that. But also retaining your existing customers is critically important, because we know that it's 6 times more expensive to get a new customer than it is to retain an existing customer. And what we also know is your existing customers know you, like you, and trust you because they've taken time to build a relationship with you. And when they've taken that time and that trust and that sense of knowing you deepens, they will accept more treatment recommendations from you. So your case acceptance will go up. And one of the things that we did some graphs on a little while ago was this retention maths concept. It's very important to understand. And that is, in dentistry, you can forget about the numbers, whatever it might be, but hypothetically, let's just say in the average practice, the average patient spends $500 with you in their first year. Now, it's probably different to that in your practice, and it's probably a lot more, but the numbers themselves don't matter. The ratios I'm about to share with you do. In year 2, typically they'll spend 1.8 to 2 times the amount that they spent with you in year 1. And again, it's because of the know, like, and trust factor. And in year 3, they'll spend 1.5 times what they spent in year 2. So if you're losing patients at the end of year 1 or sometime in year 1, you're getting basically 1/6 of that 3-year spend. And if you're losing people at the end of year 2, you're only getting half of that spend. And of course, if you're keeping people for 3 years, you get all of it. Now, I know someone somewhere is going to say, yes, but Jesse, you don't understand it. I am a sales god. Every single person that walks through my doors accepts treatment, and I am just a superstar at that. And maybe you are, right? But if you are, you're an outlier. And equally, if you are, I'm going to challenge you and let's measure that, because if you're not measuring that, I'm going to say to you that you might feel like things are going really well, but until we've got the data to prove it, then I'm going to suggest you might not be going as well as you think. But if you are, high five to you, but you're an outlier. For most people, retaining patients is a pathway to high case acceptance, and that's really, really important. So one of the things that I've noticed when it comes to patient retention is that retention is often left to chance. It's not being done proactively. And if you're going to be really good at patient retention, you've got to be proactive with it. You've got to actively manage your database. You've got to manage those recalls. You've got to manage the incomplete treatment. You've got to follow up the cancellations and no-shows, and you need to dedicate time, energy, and resource to that. And when you get that right, though, what ends up happening is you get this snowball effect, because you're still getting new patients. Of course, we're not turning that off. But when you're retaining your patients, you're getting net growth of your database, of your active patients. And what that means is you get this snowball effect. And all of a sudden, one chair gets busy and you need to think about bringing on another clinician in the second room or whatever it happens to be. But you start to get busier, capacity gets tighter, and you feel like you've got some confidence to then make some decisions about, should I make investments in capital infrastructure? And that's really, really important. What I'd encourage you to do is to think about retention as a very integral and important part of your marketing. And I'd encourage you to set aside a budget for it. Most practices will have a budget for external marketing. That's totally fine. But very few will have a budget for internal marketing or for retention. And I'd encourage you to put a budget together for that. Now, that might include actual money spent, but it would also include how you're going to use wages to drive retention. So again, make sure you resource it, make sure you put a budget in place for that. So again, that's the third thing I know for sure, and that is the best customer is the one you've already got. Now, again, my background is that I ran a digital marketing agency, and I've still enjoyed digital marketing. I've been involved in that space for 15 or so, 16 years now, more. And when I was running my agency, we could attract new patients, no problems. But those clients were losing patients at a rapid clip, and so there's this net zero growth. And that's why I wrote the retention book. And if you want to get the good oil on retention, I'd encourage you to grab a copy of the book. So if you've got a retention problem, then check that out. Equally, if you're not sure if you have a retention problem because you don't have data, start measuring, because I promise you there'll be some silent leaks in your database that will just surprise you. Alrighty, so that was number 3. Now, point number 4, one thing I've learned for sure is that success is personal. And business is governed by a series of principles, right? So the principles I've just mentioned around financial management before, those 4 keystone systems, revenue generation, cash flow, maximization, money management, wealth creation, they would be considered, core principles, right? But the way people will do those things in their own practice might vary from one place to the next. And what's really interesting is that it's important to understand the principles that make your business move forward, not just the specific tactics, because the tactics will change based on a day-to-day scenario. The market might change, the competitive landscape could change, the regulatory environment could change. And so therefore the tactics that you employ will need to adapt and change too. But the principles of good business rarely change. And so it's very, very important to understand that your success in business is governed by your understanding of these principles and making sure you apply those principles in your own way that makes sense in your own practice. And what that looks like is you could have 2 practices, right next door to one another, and you might see them as competitors, and I guess on one level they are, but on another level they could be absolutely not, because the way they're applying principles in their business is totally different from one another based on their own needs, their own personalities, their own hopes and aspirations for the future, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. They're going to be 2 very different looking practices, and they can be successful in their own right. And so just on that is to understand that there is enough work for everyone. There is really enough work for everyone. And that abundance mentality is really important when you're thinking about this. So just remember the business is governed by a series of principles, and the way you apply those will vary from your practice compared to the next, and so on and so forth. Now, the 5th thing that I know for sure is time is our most precious resource. Now, I can't remember what the average lifespan of a human being is at the moment. In the 80s, I think it's about 84 years old or something like that for a male, and probably a bit more for a woman. So Time is our most precious resource. It's a non-replenishing resource. So as you're going through your life, it's really important to understand that your financial life, important though it is still only one element of your life. And every other element of your life, whether it be relationships, whether it be your health and well-being, whether it be your hobbies, your spiritual life, whatever it is, that's all going to require a time investment. And it's really important that as you grow your business, you create time in your life to the things that are important to you. There is no point having a business that consumes you. There is no point having a business that owns you rather than you owning it, because what we know is in that situation, the practice owner gets tired, they get stressed out, they get burnt out, their performance begins to suffer, their enjoyment certainly suffers, their health can suffer too. And what we've got to be able to do is to design a business that gives you, yes, the money that you're after, but also the time that you're after in the proportions that make sense for you. And that source of leverage in your practice is going to come through building and leading a great team and giving that team the systems, the processes, and the protocols to create a replicable and repeatable outcome, whether it be a clinical outcome or whether it be a customer success outcome or anything else in between. So when it comes to building a great team, one of the challenges that dentists experience as practice owners is they're reluctant to take time away from the chair to invest in building a great team. And what I would encourage you to think about is, rather than seeing that time away from the chair as lost income in inverted commas, is I'd rather you see that as an investment in your future freedom. Because if you're going to create time in your practice and time in your business, you're going to need to have a self-managing team, which is a group of people that know what to do, they know how to do it, they have that internal drive to do it. And that's going to require an investment of time on your part to be able to build out the resources, the training materials, and so on, so that your team can grow and develop and ultimately thrive, so that you become the person of last resort in your practice rather than the person of first resort. We want to make sure that questions that need to be answered are answered well before they ever get to you. And we want to train people to think like you, and we want to have a system in place for that to occur. And that can't occur if you're going to spend your whole day chairside drilling and filling. That's just the reality, right? If you want to build a team, you've got to invest time into growing and developing that team. And what that means is it's a bit like changing gear in a car. You've got to be able to ease off the accelerator while you engage the clutch and then shift into a higher gear. And when you shift into a higher gear, you can go further faster than you could in the lower gear. And if you don't change gear, what's going to happen is you're going to get burnt out, stressed out, and tired, which a lot of dentists do because they can't quite get away from that addiction to their personal exertion income. And I'm going to encourage you to see that as a trap and to understand that if you want to create time in your life and you want to have leverage in your practice, as I said, you've got to take time away from the chair and invest that time back into your team. Really, really important. So those are the 5 things that I know for sure. There's plenty of things I could, rattle on about things outside of business and outside of dentistry, as I'm sure you could too. I'm sure there's lots of things in your life that you've learned and you now know for sure to be true in your life. And I hope you find this episode helpful. And as always, if you have queries or questions, please feel free to hit me up on the socials. I'm happy to jump into a conversation. And if you want to find out more about what we do, head across to savvydentist.com and have a look at the Practice Max page there, because our whole ethos is helping you build a practice and a life that you love, not just a practice that owns you. We want to give you that life part as well. So hope you've enjoyed this episode. Look forward to seeing you soon, and we'll see you next week. All right, take care. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.